I've had this strong interest in music personally, a lot of activity in music, and I've seen music as this amazing way to enter a culture. In 1945, jazz was considered a fairly sinister art form, if art at all. Probably most people in music would have not deemed it worthy of being taught. So for the college to take that on and to embrace jazz and contemporary music, and then subsequently we've had innovations like the first place that taught the electric guitar as an instrument, the first place that embraced music technology. More recently, we started teaching turntablism. Again, most classical conservatories would not hardly teach electric guitar still, but much less embrace music technology or something like turntablism. But our theory is that the most dynamic music is that the music that's being created now. It's always easy with hindsight to look back and say, wow, jazz was this amazing phenomenon, but at the time, people were dismissive of it. Likewise, we think hip-hop is a very powerful musical form. We think its history and origins are very important. We think it really is the voice of this generation, not just in the United States, but around the world. Somehow we had the wisdom in the 1950s to admit Quincy Jones here as a young, impoverished man from Seattle, Washington. And probably the reason this college still exists is because Quincy went on to do so much in contemporary music, in every phase of the music. Jazz, rock, blues, music, movie music. So, I feel like I'm just building on the tradition that pre-existed me. 154 of our alumni have won Grammys. Some of the major films of the last decade have been scored by Berklee alums. Back to the Future, Forrest Gump, Lord of the Rings, Aviator, those were all scored by Berklee alums. We just had a tribute to Christopher Guest, the man who wrote Spinal Tap, Mighty Wind, Best in Show, Waiting for Guffman.
I would like to introduce Roger Brown. He's now playing the drums.
Much like Hogwarts, the students who come to Berklee are of two kinds. They're the kind who are born as wizards into wizarding families. So their parents were great musicians, their grandparents were great musicians, and they're continuing a family tradition. And then there are the Muggle kind of students who were born into families where neither parent could carry a tune, and they're just miraculously out of the womb are these amazing musical creatures. My great-grandfather was a fiddler. He was a minister in the North Carolina mountains. In fact, his fiddle is sitting right in my office. I don't think he was a talented or gifted musician, but he had no radio, he had no television, he had no bands that came touring through the mountains of North Carolina, so he was music in his church and in his family. So as much as I think that most of us will never be the next Gary Burton, that doesn't mean we can't play wonderful music and enjoy ourselves. Now the coolest thing is that almost any video game you listen to, a good bit of that music was written by Berklee alums. So even as the music industry in its traditional sense of big record companies has been struggling, the video game world, which didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago, is a huge outlet for Berklee composed music. I started a band in the 5th grade called Junior and the Jailbirds. We played 2 numbers in my elementary school. We played the Ballad of the Green Beret, which was a kind of a pro-war anthem, and Blowin' in the Wind, which was the anti-war anthem. We were too young to realize that either song was making a political statement. And then I went on to be in bands all throughout high school and college. The first thing I would always do when I went to a new place is get people to teach me some folk music that everyone knew. Because if you can sing folk music, and I'm not a great singer, and I'm not an ethnomusicologist, but you just recognize that the carrier of culture is music.
Good afternoon.
And I think my staff here sometimes wish I would stop having new ideas. But I think part of what makes this place exciting is all the opportunities we have. We have an amazing ability to reach middle school and high school kids from less affluent backgrounds who don't have the luxury of private lessons with the teacher every week. I think one of the things that's true about us is we've always been fearless about embracing the future. And the future includes a lot of online communication and learning, and we now have over 6,000 students studying online with us around the world. So now we have this amazing online methodology of getting that secret sauce out to millions of people. I like to think of Berklee as becoming the Alexandria of the contemporary world for music, the way Alexandria in the ancient world was for scholars and thinkers and artists. And that's really what Boston is for the sciences and for arts and literature and music as well. So it's a pretty phenomenal place. I grew up not in New England, as it might be obvious already, but in Georgia, a small town of 10,000. And I guess some people grow up in a small town and want to stay there and live there the rest of their lives. I wanted to go out in the world and figure out what was happening in the rest of the world. So I did spend a year teaching math and physics in Kenya, and I spent a year working in a Cambodian refugee camp on the border of Thailand and Cambodia, 2 years working in the Sudan with Ethiopian refugees, and I've also traveled and worked in Ethiopia and Argentina and lots of other parts of the world. And it's a great, great thing to do because it gets you out of your own culture and lets you see how other people live, what other people are thinking and experiencing. And you never get a better sense for who you are and what you believe and how you've been raised than when you contrast it with some other place. I think we'd be a better country if we had a little more understanding of the Middle East, Africa, Asia. That's a big part of the world, and we're going to ignore it at our peril as a nation. Bright Horizons is an organization that sets up and manages workplace child care centers for hospitals and universities and large employers of one kind or another. My wife and I did it together, and we had been living and working in the Sudan. We were totally ignorant about the issues facing people in this country, and we returned eager to do something entrepreneurial, something we could do together, something that would have a human services dimension to it. We loved education. We were also contemplating starting our own young family, and so it seemed like a very logical thing to do. We spent some fairly frightening years trying to convince people that it was a good idea, but then it took off in the 90s and became a very successful organization. Now employs about 17,000 people around the world. Even though I guess I would never be mistaken for a Yankee, except by my mother and father, who can't imagine why I would choose to live in a cold place when I could have stayed in Georgia. I feel very at home here, and I feel really embraced by New England, and it's just, for me, it's almost like I feel congenitally that I found the place I was meant to be.